We're embarking on a 14-day motorcycling adventure in search of paradise. As you can see, we're up with the sparrows and we're heading to Jindabyne today. To get to Jindabyne from our place, we've got to go around past Sydney, along a whole lot of boring highway, and then a little bit of interesting road after we bypass Canberra. It's about a 570k day today, more than we normally do, but we want to get the boring stuff out of the way. At least the highway distances pass quickly. But soon we're past Goulburn and on minor roads, heading down towards Coombe. There's the odd diversion to help keep us awake. The trip to doing long kilometres is to vary what you're doing. Stand up on the pegs, sit down again. Do some bum wiggles. Steer with your left hand, then steer with your right hand. Take a bit of video. And of course stop often. So we stop in Coombe for a bit of a break, and I have a bit of a lie down as well. That's better. But it's off on the road again, and only a short distance down to Jindabyne, one of our favourite stopping off places if you've seen our previous videos. But none of this wussy staying in motels for us this time. We're camping, so we're carrying all our stuff. And because we both ride, we've got plenty of space to spread it out. For me, there are two main luxuries that should be taken: a really comfortable chair and a comfortable sleeping mat. Jindabyne's a pretty place and the campsite's right on the lake. We're heading to Porpunkah over the snowy mountains today. Breakfast every morning is porridge with fruit and a cup of coffee or tea. It rained overnight, so the tent's a bit soggy when we pack it up. We're heading up the Alpine Way, past Tom Grogan and over to Corryong.
Hi, where are you guys heading to?
Right.
Are you planning to stop in National Park?
No.
Keep going.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Well, there's a bonus. Didn't have to pay the park entry fee because we were just driving through. The Alpine Way is a beautiful road to ride on. You get glimpses right out over the mountains and then plunge into the forests. I've been riding this road for many years. In fact, this road was only sealed halfway. I rode it for the first time back in the 80s on a KLR 650, when the road was still gravel. Guido is a very pleasant rest area. It also has quite a large camping area up the back as well. We'll have to stop here sometime. There's certainly no lack of wildlife hanging around the camping area. And it's right beside this crystal clear flowing river. Beautiful. Is this paradise? Yes, it is. But as Willie Nelson says, just can't wait to get on the road again. So I hum away silently in my helmet as we head to Corryong. This is a good time to reduce a bit of the ballast and increase the power to weight ratio. We're taking a bit of a diversion at Mount Beauty and riding up the Falls Creek Road, stopping at the top, turning around and coming right back again. This is an excellent, well bitumened and very windy road. Even though this weekend it was full of cyclists. Fortunately, most of them were doing the right thing and not riding in the middle of the road. A short break and a look around, and we plunge down the mountain again. The road between Mount Beauty and Bright is again an excellent road, and we look down on Mount Beauty as we climb up the mountain. Bright is a very pretty place, but bring your money with you, it's very expensive too. We had to move on to the next little town, Porpunkah, just to be able to get a tent site, and even then it cost us $55 a night unpowered, because it was the Victorian long weekend and everyone was out. Still, it was a pretty place and we were able to camp right next to the river. It's a rest day today, so we're just going to ride up to Mount Buffallo and back, and then have a look around Bright. The day dawns very pretty, and camping right beside the river, seeing the sun shining through the trees, is really a pleasure. Is this paradise? It's pretty close. But it's porridge and fruit for breakfast again, and then off on the bikes. This national park was established in 1898, making it one of Australia's oldest national parks. It's yet another cracking ride up this mountain. Because we've started out fairly early, we've beat the rush, and we've got the road virtually to ourselves. That little white blotch on the top of that peak is the lookout that we're heading for, and there's a bit of dirt road to negotiate to get there. There are some pretty good views right from the car park, and it feels quite alpine-y up here. Even though we're decrepit old fogies, we're still going to take the walking track that goes up to the lookout. It's quite steep, but it's very well built. Although, for a tall person, there are some squeezy bits to negotiate. There's an impressive amount of engineering that's gone into this section to get us right up on the lookout that's called the Horn on Mount Buffallo. We can look over the edge of the railing and see the dirt road that winds itself up to the car park. Some of those corners are quite steep and sharp, so it takes a bit of skill to ride up to the car park on a motorbike. We panted and wheezed our way up, but the walk down was nowhere near as difficult. There's a conveniently located cafe partway down the mountain, so of course we stopped here and had a coffee and some cake. And because we were still relatively early, we had the place virtually to ourselves, just the way I like it. Back down to Bright, and we do the touristy thing by wandering around the town. There was a festival on, old cars on display, and live music. Lots of very yummy old cars. And you've got to hand it to the Americans, they really knew how to design cars back in the 50s and 60s. But there are also a couple of cars that I grew up with, good Australian cars. While we're making our own breakfast and dinners, lunch we always buy, and because I'm a health fanatic, it's usually a bakery that we go to. Back at the camp I have a look at my rear tyre. This is excellent. I'm getting to use a bit of the stuff on the side that I very rarely get to use. Australia has a lot of flat stuff in between those nice mountain roads. With perfect timing, just after we get back to camp, a big rain shower passes through. Fortunately, our new tent has plenty of space to store everything and spread out while we wait for the rain to pass. We're not into making gourmet dinners, so it's just bread and tinned chunky beef and vegetable. Surprisingly tasty. We're roughly following the Murray River today, heading towards Moama. Moama on the New South Wales side and Echuca on the Victorian side are twin towns that are very popular for tourists. It's time to pack up and we're starting to get into a routine. It's actually not as bad as I thought. We're relatively new to camping on the motorbikes, and I was concerned it would become a real pain in the neck. but it's proving to be just fine. However, it takes us about 2 hours from wake up to getting on the road, which is fine because we haven't planned long days. Myrtleford has a big route. One might be tempted to say, and here's a couple of good routes. But I'll resist that temptation. The countryside's pretty flat and open between here and Moama, but I've programmed in a series of minor roads on the GPS just to keep the interest up. We stop at an abandoned wheat silo just for a bit of a break. Most of this area out here is irrigation, and this is one of the irrigation channels. We hit the Murray River at Barmer, and this is a good place for lunch. Nice green grass to sit on too. And a few tasty Victorian dim sims for lunch. We cross back into New South Wales from here, and in no time we arrive at Moama. We're staying at a big luxurious caravan park here, and it's time to set up again. Nothing like some good green grass to set up your tent on to make you feel contented and happy. Is this paradise? Well, it used to be in the old days when I used to come here as a kid and camp, but now there's way too many people for me, so no, not paradise for me. But pretty nonetheless. And while there's plenty of local wildlife, they certainly leave lots of landmines around. No walking in bare feet here. Because we plan short riding days, we get to our destination in plenty of time to relax and enjoy the area. We lash out for dinner tonight and buy steak to cook, and buy ready-made potato salad and some tomatoes. The sun setting through the trees is pleasant, and we have a nice, quiet, restful sleep. We're heading to Hopetoun today in central Western Victoria. This area of the state has wide open plains, mostly wheat growing country. And while it's flat and straight, we're taking minor roads and it's really quite interesting, including stopping at this old service station that has the smell of old grease. The silo trail consists of a number of silos that have had murals painted on them. This practice has become quite popular, but these were the first to be done. This first example at Lascelles was a little bit disappointing. They were a bit faded. Or were they meant to be like that? I don't know. I was amused by this town. It's called Speed, but directly under it says, "Please slow down." So I don't think this is paradise. The murals at Patchewollock were quite a bit more impressive. These ones are colour rather than sepia. And it's simply amazing the amount of detail that the artists get into these huge murals. These birds made out of corrugated iron were really impressive as well. They're just standing out in the paddock, minding their own business. There's a pub directly opposite the silos, and conveniently it was lunchtime. Hopetoun's our destination for tonight. We chose this because it was supposed to have a lake right near town that you could camp on. Well, I've got to admit right up front that this is not what I expected. The whole surrounding area is parched and dry, but here is an oasis. Lush green grass and sand right round the edge. And what's more, it's donation only. And gold coin donation for the showers. This is hands down the best spot we have ever camped. It was close to town, but it was quiet and peaceful. We're doing the rest of the silo trail today, and then heading to Hall's Gap. But I could easily have stayed at least another night here. Is this paradise? Yes, it is. Green grass, butte trees, fresh water, hardly any people. Perfect. But not far down the road, just out of Rosebery, is our next silos. These sepia images at Rosebery are really impressive, and I can't decide whether I like the sepia or the colour better. I think the sepia fits in with the landscape. It reflects the dry and often arid countryside around it. More straight, flat roads. But it's not all that far between attractions, so it doesn't get boring. We were surprised to find little lakes and dams all along this route, with no evidence of a river. We later found out it's via a pipeline all the way from Hall's Gap right up to Patchewollock. A patch of water makes so much difference to the towns. Not that any of them are thriving. It was the main driving force behind the silo trail, to attract tourists into this area. These images are so lifelike. The old couple on the right-hand side look exactly like people you would see walking down the street, wrinkled from the sun and years of hard labour on the land, but yet they give the feeling of contentment with their lot. And next to them, the younger generation coming along and taking over where they have left off. But soon he'll look like the old man beside him. The silos at Sheep Hills are nowhere near a town. So we divert off the main road where the silos are located. This clearly used to be a town, but no more. The images at Sheep Hills are the most colourful. You can't help but be impressed by the scale and the detail of these images. When you look closely, you see reflected in the eyes of the children the landscape that they're looking at, and the old man and the woman bear the wrinkles of experience. On the road again, and we're heading down to Repugnant for our last example of the silo art. Unlike the previous examples, these are still working silos. Again, these are done in sepia. And I think out of all of them, these are my favourites. It shows a couple of young locals, giving the impression of hope for the future of this area. It's conveniently lunchtime again, and so we stop at this cafe before heading off to our final destination at Hall's Gap. As we head south along yet another straight road, we start to see the mountains ahead. The Grampians are very popular with bushwalkers, and as we hit the mountains, we come across some very nice twisty road, giving a pleasant change to the previous straight roads that we've been on for quite a while. Our old decrepit selves are definitely not bushwalkers, but we take the supreme effort and walk down the 1,000 steps down to Mackenzie Falls. It's certainly rewarding. Unfortunately, we have to walk all the way back up again. Not rewarding. Back at the top and on a side track, I come across this snake. He's having all sorts of trouble getting away from me on this slippery rock. He's just not getting traction. But he finally succeeds and finds a crack to crawl into. Another waterfall, and then we stop at a lookout. It gives a sense of power to be able to stand on a lookout and look down at all the plebs down in the valleys below. The Grampians are certainly bigger than I imagined, and certainly look bigger than what you can see on the map. Down at Hall's Gap, the place is buzzing. There's quite a lot of tourists around, and the cockies are doing their thing to get the garbage back out of the garbage cans. Cockatoos are the juvenile delinquents of the parrot family. We picked a caravan park that's a bit out of town, and it proved to be a winner. We're staying here 2 nights. There's a bit of grass cover and a lot of trees for shade, because it's still actually quite warm during the day. There's certainly no lack of wildlife around here, and the crimson rosellas are the first to get a feed, closely followed by the ducks. Then the bully boys arrive and boof everyone else out of the way. But I have to say that with a couple of exceptions, they were quite well mannered. Sausages, tomato and lettuce. Not too bad. As soon as food appears, so do the cockies, corellas and magpies. The crimson rosellas are too timid to make an appearance when there's cockies around. Even a feral deer or two wander through the camp in the morning. And there are kangaroos everywhere, eating the shrubbery. The camp is right next to a nice clear flowing river. And just below a dam, Lake Belfield. The outlet from the dam feeds the river. On a perfect day like today, there's a photo in every direction. So is this paradise? Well, yes, I think it's getting pretty close. The only problem it's got is maybe just a few too many people for me. Heading south towards Port Fairy today. Unfortunately, we're also heading towards more civilised country and more people. But you got to take the perfect with the not so perfect, I guess. And the ride out of the Grampians is certainly quite pleasant. Until we get out of the mountains and hit some rain. We're taking some minor roads again, so it's pleasant enough and it's not raining very heavily, it's just light showers. On our way to Port Fairy we divert across to Portland, just for a bit of a look and to have lunch. This is a pleasant town on the ocean, and it has a big wood chipping and wood chip distribution centre right here on the port. As is our practice, we buy lunch, but this proved to be a mistake in this case. This place was an absolute disaster. We waited 40 minutes for rock-hard toast and hard-boiled poached eggs. Port Fairy proved to be a pleasant little place. We chose a caravan park just over the dunes from the ocean that had grassy campsites that were separated by hedges. While the days were warm, we weren't tempted to dip into the Southern Ocean. We're doing the Great Ocean Road today. This is a major tourist attraction these days. The Great Ocean Road used to be a famous motorcycle road, but no more. It's way too busy and policed. Because we travelled from west to east, and we left relatively early, we missed most of the rush of the tourists that come from the Melbourne direction. Last time we were here many years ago, it was blowing a gale and raining. Today it's perfect weather, calm and blue and peaceful. The scenery speaks for itself, so I'll just shut up and let you enjoy the scene. This is the most famous of the landmarks. I think there are only 9 apostles left, as the sea has its way with each of them. I had a bad case of crowdstrophobia here, as we caught up with the tourists coming from the Melbourne direction. That's the last of the natural attractions on the Great Ocean Road, and now we're heading towards our final destination for the day. There's a little bit of windy road here and there before we hit the traffic. The only way to enjoy this road is to just sit back and relax, because you're never going to be able to enjoy the road from a riding point of view. There's just way too much traffic. But there's plenty of stuff to see and the scenery's really quite good. We stopped at Apollo Bay expecting to have lunch, but were driven away by the crowds. We eventually settled at Lorne at yet another bakery. What a lovely security blanket these are. More pleasant kilometres winding around the edge of the ocean, before the Great Ocean Road finally and officially ends. The scenery is still quite pleasant, so we're still enjoying the ride despite the traffic. At Queenscliff we take the ferry across Port Phillip Bay across to Sorrento. This is something we haven't done before. It's not cheap, $35 per motorcycle for a 40-minute trip. But it saves having to ride right round Port Phillip Bay and Melbourne to get to where we want to go. And besides, it's quite an adventure to take an overseas trip. And this perfect weather is really not at all hard to take. The bikes are simply parked on their side stands as the journey is across completely smooth water. The journey seems to take no time at all before we arrive on the Sorrento side. We booked our camping site online while sitting on the ferry. And now it's time to mount up, ready to ride out. We're looking for our G-spot and finding it. G-spot number 9, and I thought there was only one. Well, there you go. There are campsites all along this narrow strip of land along Port Phillip Bay. It's a pleasant place to stay so long as you don't mind traffic noise, because you're quite close to the road. Can't complain about the sunset though. Is this paradise? No, too many people. The forecast for this evening and tomorrow is for heavy rain, so we decide to push on from Capel Sound to Lake's Entrance to give us a shorter day tomorrow when we head to my brother's place, and therefore not as much riding in the rain, hopefully. There's lots of wind-powered electricity generation along this coast, and so we decided to stop at one of them and have a closer look. They're quite noisy close up, and really big, but very impressive. It's lunchtime again, another bakery, and Wendy shows off by having an egg and lettuce sandwich while I have a pasty. But neither of us can help ourselves and both have a nice fat cake each. Lake's Entrance has been a tourist town since the year dot. It's a bit old, in my opinion. All the accommodation is old and not very much evidence of reinvestment. But this cabin we decided to stay in because it's going to rain tonight is pleasant enough and it's clean. Call us wimps, but we just can't be bothered pulling down the tent in the rain tomorrow morning. Before the rain hits, we wander back into town and have a bit of a look around. It's pleasant enough to look at. And I think particularly if you're interested in water sports, boating, etc., it'd be a good place to stay. The swans were hanging around drinking fresh water out of bowls below the bubbler. My brother and sister-in-law live at Nethercote, just inland from Eden, and we're staying with them for 2 nights. Today it's raining, and it rained the whole time for the 250k up the coast to their place. And we've found over the years it doesn't matter what you wear when you're riding a motorcycle. If you're out in the rain long enough, the rain gets in. The road from Eden to Nethercote is really quite pleasant, even in the rain. And the rain eases off just a little for us as we arrive at my brother's house. That's right, we're not hardcore campers. We've got no intention of setting up the tent in the rain for the next 2 nights, compared to a nice, warm, comfortable, in a nice house type bed. So it's a pleasure to park under cover, take off our wet clothes and have a nice hot shower. Pure luxury. Evie, their new puppy border collie, made us feel welcome. It's hard to spot the real dog. The view from the back patio is very pleasant. I could easily sit in a rocking chair with a shotgun across my knee and thinking of all the adventures I've been on in the past. It's a rest day today and we're luxuriating. We're being ferried around like tourists, and so we take a walk on the beach with the dog. Most of the rain seems to have passed and there's only just a few showers left. Evie certainly likes the beach. Now it's back to a comfy bed. Tomorrow we start heading for home. We're heading up the coast to Bateman's Bay and then up to Goulburn and then home, taking 2 days. There's nothing much to video, so this is where the video finishes. It's been a varied trip, and this is the longest time we've been away on the bikes and camped most of the time. I seriously wondered whether my old body would cope with this, both the distances, the time and the camping. But it has, and it's been really good. As we leave for home, I wonder, was that paradise? Well, yes, I think it was. Not many people, lots of green grass, pleasant weather. What more could you want? Our quest to find paradise has finally been completed.